Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the town hall. I'm President Kim Schatzel, and I'm really pleased that everybody could join us this morning. Much work is still continuing as we prepare Towson for the return to campus and the return to classes. And we're really looking forward to having this town hall and be able to answer questions that all of you might have. So with this, let me introduce my colleagues. We have Melanie Perot, of course, the Provost and Executive Vice President of Academic Affairs. Vernon Hurt, Vice President of Student Affairs. We also have Ben Lowenthal, who is the Vice President of Administration and Finance and our Chief Financial Officer. And we have Steve Jones joining us as well, our Chief Human Resource Officer. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Marina Cooper, who's our Vice President of Communications and Marketing, and let's get to some questions.
Good morning, and thank you. We'll take our first question directly from Parking and Transportation. So this one will be for Vice President Lowenthal. Assuming that there are in-person classes this fall, will there be on and off-campus shuttle bus service? If so, will there be modifications to the schedule and or capacity of the buses?
Thank you, Marina. Excellent question. Yes, there will be service. We're concentrating our efforts on the routes that are most high demand. We intend to hire additional drivers to be able to compensate for the fact that each of the buses will have approximately only 30% of the capacity at full capacity. So you're talking about a bus that normally would hold 30, hold maybe 8. And so we're adjusting for that. We intend to run the schedules very similar to how they were run pre-pandemic. And the only routes that we're thinking about needing to have to cut back on just because we have to put more drivers in to be able to get more vehicles on those routes to handle the capacity are a couple of not so frequently used off-campus routes that we're working with Vernon and others to make sure that we have other possibilities for those folks to get to campus when they need to.
Thank you. The next question might be for Associate Vice President Jones. Can a department use a 4-10-hour work schedule to lessen the time on campus for staff, provided operations are properly maintained?
Yeah, great question, because we are trying to be as flexible as possible to make sure that we minimize the density on the campus, and we've encouraged managers and supervisors to look for creative ways to try to accommodate getting the work done, scheduling, along with any kind of constraints that individuals might have relative to their ability to come in. So whether it's varying the days of the week, the hours in the day, the number of weeks, week on, week off, we've asked managers and supervisors to be creative. And we're trying to make sure that we're not prescriptive, because one size doesn't fit all. We have a variety of different operations across the campus, and we want to make sure that we accommodate as best we can the needs of our staff in terms of the way we schedule the work.
Thank you. A follow-up to that is, what is the appeal process if a staff member who have department heads are making non-essential staff, they consider themselves non-essential staff, return regardless of their maybe personally expressed safety and health concerns?
Very good question. We're going through a process now where we're trying to actually identify the specific individuals who may have some concern about returning to campus. And we should not be in a position where someone's being told that they have to come in if they have some concern about coming back. We want to identify the individuals first and then have some conversation about how we're going to handle each particular situation, because each situation is probably going to have a little bit of a difference to it. And again, it's not a one size fits all. We do know that some people are going to have health related reasons, and those individuals are going to be obviously they're affected a little differently in terms of the way coverage and the way they may be paid. But then we're going to have individuals who just have general concerns for other reasons that may not be either directly or indirectly health related. And we need to make sure that we're taking a look at each individual situation so we can address and accommodate as best we can each individual situation. So we shouldn't have a situation right now where someone's been told, no, that's not a good enough reason, you need to come back. We haven't reached the point where we've had a discussion about the individuals. We're collecting that data right now.
If I can just also add, Steve, one of the things that we've talked about every single time is the fact that we really want to encourage telework.
Correct.
What we want to be able to do is in all circumstances where people can do their work either by teleworking part-time or full-time, we want to encourage that as a solution to this because we want to provide for a lower density on the campus.
Thank you. The next question is regarding parking. So to Vice President Lowenthal, if we come to campus before August 1st, when our new parking permits would begin, and we were regular permit holders that received the refund in the spring, do we need to pay for a daily pass prior to August 1st?
Thank you, Marina. Excellent question. No, the answer is you do not have to pay for any parking prior to August 23rd. So any parking enforcement is not in place until August 23rd, which is the date where we expect everyone who is returning to campus to be on campus.
Excellent, thank you. Next question is for the provost. If I have a graduate student who is not sure about coming back for the semester, if classes are not face-to-face, what sort of support system do we have for such students? So this, again, I don't know if I read that correctly, but the graduate student is not sure about coming back face-to-face. What kind of support do we have for such students?
So I guess non-academics, I don't fully understand the question, to be honest with you, but certainly one of the things I would encourage everybody to look is the schedule will be posted this week. It's already being put in the system to identify modality of all the courses. So they'll be able to understand whether they're face-to-face or online this week. So certainly I would encourage that graduate student to look at that. But in terms of access to support services, academic support services, or things like that, I guess if the person could maybe clarify the question a little bit, that would be terrific. But certainly they can, and I would encourage them to speak with their advisor and discuss how they might get back on track academically if they choose not to participate this fall. How might they continue their graduate education uninterrupted? So speak with the advisor is your best bet, and then moving forward from there.
Thank you. A question about, based on the rising cases in the US, and perhaps this might be a question for the president, based on the rising cases in the US, especially amongst young people, is it likely that we may go virtual prior to students even arriving for move-in on August 13th?
So that's a great question. What I would be able to do is, first of all, say it's very, very difficult to speculate given these conditions. I think all of us realize that if we were going to take a look at where we were going to see the trajectory of COVID in the United States over the last maybe a month ago versus now, we see that there's been significant change, and it's largely been in other states. One of the things that we're keeping very close tabs on is, of course, Maryland. Because of the fact that most of our students they're from within 50 miles of the campus itself, or 100 miles of the campus itself within Maryland. But in direct answer to your question, as we've said before, we are working very, very closely with the system in terms of monitoring this. We're very, very fortunate in the fact that we are part of the USM, and as part of that, we also have UMB. And UMB is actually working on many monitoring and advising the governor with regard to that. There's virologists, epidemiologists that are on the advisory staff for the governor. We're also in close contact with Baltimore County Public Health and have that relationship established. I've met with the county executive with regard to that. So we will follow state, local guidance as well as CDC guidance. And of course, we will always be working with the county and public health there to be able to understand what the situation would be either in the surrounding area, whether it be the county, whether it be Towson, or whether it be the state. And based on their advice and based on their directives, we will, of course, adjust our environment accordingly. We did that in the spring. And if, unfortunately, that would have to happen, we would, of course, be highly responsive to it. The safety and welfare of our campus community is foremost in what we're trying to do. And that's why we've actually created such a flexible schedule. I'm hoping, as well as I think everybody else is, that we'll be able to move forward in terms of the fact that you see that the governor's in phase 2. And we've put so many precautions in place and so much work is done in place to be able to reduce the risk, both on the campus as well as with the staff, faculty, and students in terms of practices. But again, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we will not waver And if there are directives or response from the county government, from the state, that we will be responsive.
Thank you. The next question is, will TU be doing a similar program as UMBC in terms of cross-sectional COVID-19 diagnostic testing of faculty and staff?
I think that might want to go to the provost, particularly because the provost is serving on the USM COVID team.
So what we're doing is, if you've come by campus, we do have there's a pop-up tent right outside of the health center where all faculty, staff, and students, including our contractual staff, so ABM employees and others, can come and get a COVID test for free. So right now the hours are relatively limited, 9 to 3 on Monday and Wednesday, but we will be expanding those hours as we get closer and as more people choose to come back. So as with everything else, we are following the science on this. And so if the scientific advice changes, we will change. But right now the advice is that testing everybody is not an effective way to combat the virus, but doing selected testing of groups and combining that with symptom monitoring is the most effective way that the CDC advises for being able to contain the spread of the virus to the best of our ability. So we're following that advice, and so we don't have at this point required testing of all employees or students or staff, selected groups, and then also voluntarily for everybody who would like a test. So I myself am getting a test next Monday to experience the process. And I encourage anybody who wants a test. That's a great resource for everybody. And the turnaround time right now is about 48 to 72 hours to get your results. So please take advantage.
And I would encourage everybody as well. You can make appointments. It's online to be able to do that. And I actually had a test last week because I too wanted to be able to experience, the process itself, and very, very well organized, and it doesn't hurt. So I just want to tell everybody that it doesn't hurt.
That's great. The fall semester plan for students is to return at Thanksgiving and have classes online for the rest of the semester. Is that true, Vice President Hurt? And what will that transition in terms of Thanksgiving and students who reside on campus look like?
So yes, that is true. As we did in the spring, we will have some students who will remain on campus who have longer term contracts on housing or special needs, for example, our international students. But we will see a pretty significant decrease in the number of students on campus as we're planning the shift after the Thanksgiving holiday.
A follow-up to that question is, when students return in Thanksgiving, are there any particular protocols they'll have to follow, and will they have to quarantine for having been home?
So we're really going to, encourage as many students who will be planning to remain after the holiday to just remain on campus. Certainly, we'll keep our eye on the local county guidance, the state guidance to determine if there are any particular quarantine requirements, and we'll certainly align our practice with that.
So I just want to jump in to make sure that we're clear and that the provost can weigh in on this as well. We're planning on the fact that prior to Thanksgiving, I mean, basically, I think it's either the Tuesday or Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and the provost can correct me. That will be when on-campus face-to-face classes terminate at that point in time, and will go online. That's also when we're going to be vacating the residence halls. There will be, and there always is, a small number of students that remain on campus for a variety of reasons, for example, international students. And of course, we would not change our protocols with them. But basically what we're saying is the fact that with the commencement of the Thanksgiving break, we will be moving to complete online delivery, and that the students would come back then basically the end of minimester for January. Is that correct, Provost? And
right. So the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the campus is closed as is tradition. So there'll be no classes on that day. We'll be shifting at that point to online. So the actual first day of all online courses will be the Monday after Thanksgiving. So Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week courses as normal, and then switch to the distance modality on the following week.
Thank you. Next question for Vice President Lowenthal. If I opt for not buying a parking pass this semester, do I need to constantly purchase a timed daily pass? Is there some sort of alternative for faculty who might intend to randomly get to their offices?
Thank you, Maria. Excellent question. We've already reduced the semesterly rate by 50%. And the reason we did that is to allow for the fact that people will not be coming to campus necessarily on a daily basis. So that would be, to me, the primary option. If you choose and you're not coming as often, then yes, you do have to go to the daily pass. That's completely online. So hopefully that makes it easier to purchase those daily passes. And I also want to mention that we have heard that the daily rate is $12 a day, which is definitely more than we think should be at this point in time. So stay tuned because we'll be adjusting that rate downwards as well.
Great, that answers a couple of follow-ups we had in regards to the daily rate. Thank you. Next question, what flexibility, and this might be one for Associate Vice President Jones, what flexibility and adjustments will be approved for parents of school-age children with work schedules, since Baltimore County Public Schools will probably be starting the fall year virtually?
Yeah, another great question, because I know a lot of parents are out there kind of holding their breath, waiting to see what's going to happen with public schools. And basically what we're saying is we're going to try to accommodate situations as they come up. And we know that, that the school situation is out of the employee's hands. At the same time, we know that folks are trying to juggle work and juggle parenting, maybe even juggle educating their child at home. So the accommodation is going to be whatever we can do to work around whatever needs the individual has. If you remember, we changed our telework policy back in March that basically said, watching your kids at home is not a preclusion to doing telework. So obviously we want to be able to encourage telework to the extent that's possible. And if for some reason, the telework isn't available and an individual is not able to come into campus to do work, then we'll work with that individual in terms of what work might they be able to do, and then how do we accommodate the absences? Because again, we recognize this is an unusual situation, and we want to do everything we can to accommodate some of the difficulties and the challenges that people are going to be facing going forward in the next few months.
And here's a follow-up for you, Steve. If a staff member is teleworking but occasionally needs to be present at campus to pick up mail or other paperwork, will that staff member need to get permission to go to campus other than from their supervisor?
Well, I guess there's kind of like the pre-August 3rd and 10th and the post-August 3rd and 10th. Right now, we're asking for people to give us some information relative to them coming to campus. And we're really trying to manage the density on the campus to make sure that we don't have 20 people show up in a particular department or unit or building at one time. But once we get to the August 10th date, which is the date that we want to be ready as a campus for everybody to come on, obviously we know people are going to have to come and go different times. We do ask that the supervisor be made aware so that they can manage any kind of potential density issues that might come up. But we know people are going to have to drop things off, pick things up. And that hybrid schedule in terms of telework and then occasionally coming in to campus is designed exactly for that. And there may be occasions where people can say every Tuesday at 2 o'clock I need to come in, but then again it may be unscheduled, and as long as we call in and say, hey, I'm coming in, is it going to be a problem, or do I need to find a different time? Again, we're just going to try to accommodate the individual situation when it comes up.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to combine a couple of questions we have around quarantining for folks who go out of state. We have a question here about students who might be from states who have high volumes of cases. Are there any 2-week self-quarantine requirements prior to their arrival? And then the same question is really posed for faculty and staff who might have been out of state on vacations or visiting family. Are there any quarantine requirements for any members of campus prior to returning to campus? I'm gonna put that over to Provost.
We might want to put it over to Steve, because this could be the issue also with the symptom symptom assessment, quick scan. So let me start by saying the fact that, again, if the governor provides for travel restrictions, as some states have done, of course, we're going to comply with that. As of now, Maryland does not have travel restrictions associated with certain states. But there is the fact of CDC requirements, which again, we will follow, regarding if there has been, you've been exposed to a positive COVID case, to be able to be managed. And that's faculty, employees, or students. And that will allow for the fact that we are putting protocols in place to have what the response of an individual would be in that case. And that would be for the entire community, not just students. It would be students, faculty, and staff, as well as support to be able to do that. Steve, can you talk a little bit about the quick scan?
Sure. To the president's point, we've introduced the Tigers Care Quick Scan, and we've been administering that on a daily basis for people who are already coming back to campus. Every day, an email comes and asks a series of questions about your health, and it's really to help monitor potential symptoms that might be related to COVID. And if an individual has any of those symptoms, we ask that they not come to campus, and then we provide a nurse health line for that individual to call to get additional guidance in terms of whether they need to see a physician. It may be something related to an allergy, which may not be an issue, and then they get released to come into work. We plan on the week of, I believe it's the 27th, to turn that on for everybody in anticipation of everyone coming back to campus. And that would be, again, a daily screen that we would ask you to answer the questions prior to coming in. And we're working out some of the logistics of that right now. So stay tuned for the specifics, but that's kind of summarily what you can anticipate seeing when you return to campus. And that's our way to monitor the health of the campus. And really, just to make sure that we're attentive to, whether it's temperature spikes or, people that are exhibiting some symptoms, or they've been exposed to people that have had COVID, somebody that's been positive or somebody that's currently under a test for COVID-19. And one of the reasons we're waiting is because we know your Tigers Care package is going to be coming next week, and that will have a digital thermometer in there, because we are asking that each individual coming to campus take your temperature every morning, so we can have an idea of whether or not that temperature exceeds that 100.4, which is kind of that threshold symptom that medical experts are telling us that's one of the indicators that there's a potential symptom there for COVID-19. So hopefully that answers the question, but the daily screening is another tool that we're going to use to try to monitor the health of the campus.
Thank you. Next question is for Vice President Lowenthal. Due to budget cuts, do you foresee furloughs in the near future?
Excellent question. We do not. We've been managing the budget based on our previous solid financial standing, as well as some tools that we have in the toolbox to manage that, including some cuts to operating budgets and a hiring freeze, an Arctic hiring freeze. And all those tools together are enabling us to cover the losses that COVID-19 is creating, while preserving, again, our most valuable resource, which is all of you. And we do not foresee any furloughs or layoffs.
Thank you. Next question's for Provost. The question is around the academic calendar. TU is beginning a week earlier than both College Park and Salisbury on August 24th, but ending the semester at the same time. Is there any reason or rationale to that? And can you also talk about why we're going online after Thanksgiving?
Great. So it's an excellent question. So we are actually having the exact same number of weeks of instruction as we would have before. So we are actually ending earlier than we would have previously. So it was quite a late semester anyway. Every 7 years you get this really late calendar, and so we were in the very late calendar. But the logic of it is this. We really want to get our students who are in a face-to-face environment as much of the experiential education as you possibly can. So the laboratories, the music, the arts, all of those sorts of experiences, internships. And so there's an anticipation from the scientists that what will happen in late fall, what is likely to happen, is a convergence of the seasonal flu with the COVID. And so the timing of that is expected to be late fall. And so when that happens, it's going to present it may present an awful lot of challenges. So based on that prediction, what we decided to do is to just shift up 1 week so that we can get those sort of experiences in for our students. And then again, the semester ends a week earlier than it would have. And it also allows faculty to have some intentionality around how the semester will end. So when we left in the spring, of course, everybody scrambled and did an amazing job to figure out how to do final exams and things like that. But knowing in advance that we're going to move to this all remote modality will allow faculty to think about what sorts of assignments they give, how they build their semester, how you might transform from a traditional final exams to some other type of summative assessment. And so it's really designed to increase that the educational excellence, the planning for faculty and for students, and to ideally avoid this notion of the mad scramble that happened at the end of the spring. So those are the reasons for both of those decisions: the starting early and the returning to a remote after Thanksgiving.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions about what if we get a case on campus? What does that look like for a residential student if they get sick and their plan? What is the plan in terms of relocating or quarantining that student? So we'll toss that to Vice President Hurt. And then the same question has also been asked about faculty or staff. What level of shutdown might happen is the question, or if that person, for example, is in transportation facilities or dining services. So we'll start with Vice President Hurt for the student.
A great question. So for our students, we have held offline one of our towers that was planned for renovation this year. We've delayed the renovation in order to have that reserved space to be able to quarantine students. So in collaboration with the health center, we'll be able to work with those students to have them move to the quarantine space. We've already kind of put in place a number of different support mechanisms, for example, in terms of dining and having food delivered to students in those spaces. We were able to put those protocols in place during the spring, as needed to be prepared. And so we'll continue those plans and again, have our students in quarantine in one of our towers.
And then the staff question.
Yeah, again, a good question, because we need to be mindful of the fact that there are going to be faculty and staff, obviously, that could be coming into contact with the virus or somebody that has the virus. And part of this, we put together a COVID response team, and we're developing that group right now. It's a cross-functional group, representative across the campus, individuals who are particularly skilled, knowledgeable in the areas of safety and health. To help us navigate what exactly will happen and what has to happen relative to either CDC guidelines, state guidelines, county guidelines, to make sure that if there is a positive case, what direction does the individual get, and then the contact tracing, which is going to be handled by the county, and then internally, what do we need to do to make sure that proper communication is taking place with individuals who may have been exposed, additional cleaning that may have to take place in areas where somebody may have been working or had contact with. And all of that is being driven by and guided by guidelines that we're following, obviously, like, as I said earlier, from local, state, and federal levels. We also have an internal mechanism that allows for a self-report, and it's to help us maybe get a little bit of a jump start, if you would, on what may end up being a positive case, because just because there's symptoms or because there's the potential for it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a positive case. And we have to be really mindful and careful that we're going to take the approach that it could end up being positive, but at the same time, it's the don't holler till you're hurt, but we also want to take the abundance of caution to make sure that we're addressing the issue seriously, so that if it does come back as a positive, we've taken appropriate measures for the individual who may be affected, as well as other individuals who may have been exposed to that particular individual. But stay tuned, because the COVID response team is going to be giving more information, particularly around faculty and staff situations. And I know Vernon mentioned, the quarantining on campus for residential students. As far as what we may do or what we may have to do with a faculty or staff member that tests positive, that direction obviously would be a little bit different because again, we would be following some different guidelines rather than having a resident right here on our campus.
Thank you. Steve, we're going to keep it with you. Are staff expected to return to campus after Thanksgiving? So a question about kind of the low density work schedules and whether or not those will continue or go to full telework.
Yeah, again, another good question. And there's no intent to shut down the campus after Thanksgiving. It's just simply that the academic portion, the on-campus academic portion will end, as the provost just explained. So whatever work arrangements we have in place for staff will continue. And the campus, as we know right now, will continue to operate as it did prior to Thanksgiving.
And Madam President, I think you also reinforced the stay-at-home order, which really prompted and triggered the initial
Right.
the initial departure in March. Next question is around internet connectivity. Is TU aware of the active work to improve internet connectivity and access across rural areas and cities of Maryland? And this is an ongoing challenge of being productive at a distance. How are we supporting faculty and staff who need to continue this type of connectivity to do their work?
I think we might want to pass that to Ben.
Yeah, and OTS has been working very hard to support all of the needs of staff and faculty. There is a loaner program, both for laptops and headsets and the like, if it is needed, and that would be contact through the help desk. And the internet and connectivity issues is something that we can try to assist with, depending on the area that you're coming from. We do have limited number of hotspots available, and I know as well that the university system is actually working globally throughout the system to track the spots in the state that are most in need of additional technology, and then in turn working with the state governor as well to try to improve connectivity in those areas.
Thank you. Here's a question for you as well, Vice President Lowenthal. Have room capacities been established yet? And if not, when do you think that will be ready and available? Yes,
the facility staff is actually working their way through campus, through all the buildings, and providing signage in rooms for capacities. So many tigers per room, and that includes classrooms, other rooms, restrooms, etc. So the signage is in the process of being put up, and those capacities have been established based on the CDC guidelines.
Thank you.
Provost, do you want to talk about, or I can mention it and just ask the Provost to add on. One of the things that we've also installed as part of making sure that the work areas are established, and that's both for the academic buildings as well as for the other buildings on campus, is I've asked both the members of the vice presidents of the divisions and the deans to do walkthroughs with facilities. So they'll sign off on the area. And that basically means that the dean and the provost will walk through with facilities people. So there's an understanding of why the rooms have this capacity, where the plexiglass is, where the directional signs are. So your vice president or your dean will have final say-so and have that kind of conversation with the facilities as well as the environmental health and safety individuals in terms of preparing the buildings, the classrooms, and the office areas that we're working in. And I know the provost has gone through several buildings with the deans to be able to do that. Can you just kind of tell us about that a bit more, Provost?
Sure. So so far I've done walkthroughs with everybody. COFAC is tomorrow, and that's the last area to walk through with the deans. What's been really important is that the deans understand how the facilities are used, and so the conversations are very detailed about how well this room is used this way and the students flow that way, and we need this area for this type of, on a diagram, this just looks like a square space, but here's how we actually use it. And so having those conversations has allowed facilities and the deans to really come up with really good plans to follow those CDC guidelines and actually exceed them in many cases. So we're using a very high-tech device, which is a piece of plywood that's cut to 7.5 feet. And so we're using that to make sure to do placements where desks can be, where people can stand outside of restrooms and those sorts of things, and putting up that signage. And so what you'll see when you return to your classrooms or any of your other buildings is, if you've seen in restaurants the sort of sit here signs, those are going to be all over the campus, and you know, on the floor in some cases, right on the desk in other cases. And that's where, you know, it really indicates that we're using this the most conservative estimate that you can use to maximize safety. So so that's what we've been doing, and sort of nudging things around, moving furniture. I think it's been a really good experience for the deans to have that input, and it's been you know, very productive.
And I know that Vernon, you've done similar, taking a look at the residence halls, and so I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that a vice president or a dean is going through all of the work areas that everybody's going to be in to be able to approve that this is set up the way that they would expect. So it's not simply that we have facilities going into areas and that they don't understand, as the provost said, the workflow, or you know, that at noon a lot of people gather here or things like that. Now we are going to be low density, but we're doing everything we can to be able to have the review appropriate for the individuals that would be using the space.
Thank you. Next question is, Provost, is there any update in terms of the University Child Care Center, and in particular, when will faculty and staff who use that Child Care Center at TU know when or if their child might be accommodated?
Yes, there is an update. So I do have a date. So they are anticipating opening on August 17th. And so again, they have to follow all the low density and the cleaning protocols and all that are set by the state. But that is the date they are scheduled to open. So I would contact them and start discussing what the availability is for you. But it will be open. That's the date, and they're working hard to get everything prepared.
Thank you. Next question for Vice President Hurt. What events will be happening for students who move in as early as August 13th, 11 whole days before classes start?
Sure. So the Welcome to TU Planning Committee has been working and preparing. Certainly our welcome will look different this year, just based on the context. But we're definitely committed to, just continuing to have good programming for our students. So you'll see both passive, virtual programming, some face-to-face programming that we can do, certainly including our orientation leaders. That more face-to-face orientation, welcome, the TU programming will begin at the latter part of that phase. You'll see as we phase in students, there'll be more of kind of the passive and virtual engagement that'll be available. I'll also say that, we want to be very intentional about the availability of our various support offices across campus, knowing that many of our students, particularly our new students, will be able to utilize that time to begin to get certain questions answered and gather, more information, connect with pertinent staff for kind of their individual needs. So you'll see in that time really a combination of both some programming in virtual and passive space, but also availability of staff to help students again begin to onboard. We're very mindful of our new direct from high school students in particular, that this transition into kind of university life is just going to be really different, just based on how their high school experience needs. So one of the things, for example, that we're plugging in to Welcome to TU is some virtual engagement and workshops around, the academic experience and what to prepare for, what does it mean to kind of be successful, and really having that collaboration between student affairs and our faculty to help kind of tee up and prepare our students. So that's one of the the ways that we're making some unique adjustments to welcome to TU this year to really meet students where they are now and help to support a really successful start for them.
Thank you. Next question is, will faculty and staff be alerted if and when anyone on campus has tested positive for COVID-19?
I'll pass this over to Steve. If you would talk about that, Steve, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. When we get a positive COVID test result, obviously first and foremost is to make sure that the contact tracing takes place appropriately, which is going to be handled through the Baltimore County Health Department. And we will communicate as directed and as we need to on a need in terms of defined by local and state and federal regulations, because we have to be cognizant of HIPAA regulations. And this is, kind of a balance between HIPAA and I guess the health of the public community, the greater community. And we're going to take our direction and guidance from the state and the county in terms of who needs to be contacted directly and what kind of overall information we may have to share with the general TU community. We have not been sharing with the general TU community at this point, but we have been going back to individuals who may have been in contact with an individual who tested positive. And that's obviously been in conjunction with and in cooperation with the Baltimore County Health Department.
A follow-up to that is, will there be a place where the community can see the infection rate or the potential infection rate, number of negative tests, number of positive tests within the community? And is there a threshold that the campus is willing to accept before the possibility of going fully online?
I'll take that. So that's a very, very good question. Everybody's become educated to positivity rates. What we're doing is we're working with the rest of the USM, specifically with UMB. And if the UMB people were here, the medical professionals and scientists, they would say that that's one indicator. And I'm sure many of you have seen part of it is hospitalizations, ICUs, 10-day trends, et cetera, et cetera. So as we've been counseled, it's one indicator. So the answer to that question is that we are going to be responsive to the county and to the state with regard to direction that they have. If the governor makes a decision, as it looks like, we're waiting to be able to hear about public schools. We're waiting to be able to hear about indoor dining if there's changes to that. So if there's changes either from the county or from the state that would impact us or the CDC, we would absolutely immediately comply with those directives and make the adjustments that we would have to do based on those directives in terms of our operations, both in the classroom as well as in the administrative functions.
Thank you. Follow-up question, and this one might be better for Associate Vice President Jones. Does the Tigers Care Quick Scan, this person's called it the self-screening and symptom tool, but we're calling it the Tigers Care Quick Scan, form need to be filled out on days that we're not even scheduled to be on site every day? What about days that I'm on vacation?
Yeah, good question. What we're trying to do is to instill a habit, and we recognize that when people aren't coming to campus, that they may for whatever reason forget or not do it. And we're going through right now trying to evaluate what's the reasonability of a request. But understanding that our intent is to try to make sure we're monitoring the health of our community as a whole. And we're trying to make it so, as the president has often referenced, kind of like brushing your teeth in the morning. It's just something that you do. And again, it's to help us look at information where we may have some trend or some symptoms developing in a particular area that could give us a precursor to the potential issue that we may have in a particular area. So I guess the answer to the question is we haven't defined it yet completely, but we are going to encourage a daily submission, just to become part of the habit, part of the fabric of what we do as part of working at TU.
And if I can add, part of that is also that we're working with UMB and UMS and the rest of the system to be able to develop this tool to be able to provide for it. And it's in everybody's best interest to develop that habit, both for you personally as well as for the community. because of the complexity it would have, that you'd have to know who's on vacation, who's not on vacation. You might want to take tomorrow off and didn't decide it until the last minute. So to be able to develop a habit that we would all have, to be able to make use of it, and on your app, just know what it is. It would just be probably the easiest and the most fail-safe way to be able to do it. But again, we're having conversations still about how we might be rolling this out. My druthers is the fact that we try and have everybody be able to support each other, to just answer it every day. And as Steve says, it becomes a habit like brushing our teeth, because it's just easier, just in general.
Excellent. We have a note of thanks for the campus-wide access to Zoom licensure. Much appreciated. That's from Mary Stapleton. So kudos to the panel on that. Here's a question from staff that are in cubicles, and must be masked at all times. Where are we supposed to go eat, and what does dining services look like on campus?
So that's kind of a two-part question, I think. Part of it is the low density issue. So one of the things is, if you haven't been contacted by your supervisor yet in terms of coming back, that's something that will happen, to be able to understand your workspace for that. And it might change. You might be someone who's working in a cubicle and you're not going to be working in a cubicle, or you'll be working from home. So there has actually been some adjustments in terms of the workspaces to be able to care for that as well. So I would make sure that you talk to your supervisor. And again, we're having the vice presidents and supervisors walk through the areas to be able to address that. When it comes to dining, I'll just ask Ben if you would please answer the dining question.
Sure, thank you. So dining will be available on campus. It'll be takeout. So the food that you normally see available will be available in most of the dining venues throughout campus. Due to construction and COVID to some degree, we will have a couple areas that will be closed. The Susquehanna area is going to be closed due to construction in the Union. And we are also closing Newell dining area, although we will have the smaller Newell Hall area upstairs will be available, and we'll be also selling takeout. We'll be following the CDC and state guidelines in terms of dining, which right now allows for 50% capacity. And if you so choose, you'll be able to sit in the various dining venues at that 50% capacity. At the same time, you'll have the ability to take it out and eat wherever you'd like. And as we've mentioned before, we're excited that we're adding outdoor furniture in many places. It's already in place in a few areas on campus, and will be added prior to the beginning of the semester at the end of August to many other areas, to include West Village outside of CLA. So we encourage folks to use those areas for dining as well. In addition to that, Black and Gold catering is also available. So if you do have some sort of event that, of course, is socially or physically distanced, you will be able to purchase whatever the food is with and work through Black and Gold catering, and they'd be happy to provide their services as well.
Excellent. That answered a few questions proactively. Thank you. There's also a question about signage and instruction, Vice President Lowenthal, around hallways and areas where folks congregate, particularly those entrances. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and our community responsibility around that?
Absolutely. Thank you. Another excellent question. So there are signs going up, as I mentioned earlier, throughout campus. Many of them are directional, so there will be signs for staying to the right, going in either direction if the hallway is large enough. In places where there are stairwells that are more narrow, and there are enough stairwells in the building to make this possible, there's going to be some that are one way up and the other side down, for example. Try to keep the density as safe as possible and healthy for everybody. In terms of the hallways, we certainly request everyone, as the president was saying earlier, we're all responsible for one another. So you go where you need to go. Obviously, you're wearing your masks, and you try to move through as quickly as possible. And we are also adding signage. There's floor signage in many places, 6 feet is safer. There's going to be some other floor signage that also asks people to continue to move so that there is as little congregating as possible throughout campus. We are all responsible for each other's health and safety, and we hope everyone takes that seriously and goes where you need to go, but keep it to a minimum.
Yeah, I think reinforcing that we're all responsible for each other's safety is important. Steve, can you talk a little bit about that community commitment that we have also distributed in a few campus communications around that? Because I've seen quite a few questions about how things are going to be enforced, policed, and whose responsibility is it to, in terms of monitoring building capacity, traffic, and mask protocols, et cetera.
Yeah, very, very good question. And we developed a community commitment because, as you've heard from the president, you've heard from Ben, we're all in this together, and we each have to take responsibility for ourselves and hold each other accountable. Whether it's wearing a mask, it's the distancing, it's the density, it's making sure that we disinfect equipment, that we clean community equipment that we're using, equipment in our offices. It's just going to be a different world when we come back to campus, and all of us have to kind of pitch in and do this together. And the community commitment was a way for us to generate a document that says, read through this and tell us that you're in. And we all have to be in this together, and we all have to support each other. And if for some reason somebody forgets, or somebody kind of is not following, it's okay, to encourage them and say, hey, you might want to pull that mask up over your nose, or hey, this is a masked building. We believe we're in an adult environment. We believe that we're all responsible, and we are taking an approach that our expectation is that we're all going to comply and adhere. Now, that being said, obviously, if we have an occasion where we've tried various encouragement, suggestions, et cetera, we will have a process to address situations where, for whatever reason, somebody refuses to comply. But we've been focusing more on encouraging of the positive behavior, encouraging people to take responsibility. And again, as has been mentioned, we're going to have fewer people on the campus from a staff and faculty perspective. And we do believe that all of us are trying to make sure that we're successful in bringing everybody back to campus, because our success is going to be determined by each of us individually and collectively. And we can control what we can control. We can't control the state. We can't control what happens, if somebody tells us to send everybody home, but we can control our behaviors on campus. And this is going to be a tremendous behavioral adjustment in terms of all of us making sure that we're doing our part to support the change behaviors that we're going to need in order to have a safe and healthy campus.
Thank you. Next question is in regards to unexpected visitors on campus, and particularly folks are concerned about visitors that might drop by, or perhaps prospective students and their families. Provost, how are we handling admissions tours?
So we currently aren't planning to do any face-to-face admission tours. So they've gone all virtual. We intend to stay virtual again, unless something dramatically changes. We won't be bringing external prospective students or their families on campus.
Going further, we canceled all use of facilities in the university with regard to third party. So events and conference services, we used to rent out West Village, we used to rent out CQ, we used to rent out the ballrooms, Auburn House, South Campus Pavilion, Minigan Room for use by community members or business groups. And we're not doing any of that. And we actually started that last year. And again, it's the reason, the fact we don't want people on campus who are not part of the community. It just increases the complexity of things. Someone asked about visitors. We're not planning on having any visitors. I mean, if you can have a meeting, the meeting should be via Zoom. We can do that and make use of that. So both in terms of telework or people that might come to campus, we're going to strongly encourage the fact that you make use of the technology to be able to have meetings with individuals, so that we don't have, quote, guests to campus.
Thank you. The next question is for the provost, and it's about the modality mix and when course format might be shared. Will it be clearly communicated how students can attend class, and how they might go about determining their choice, whether it's face-to-face? Is it the student's choice, or is it the professor's choice?
So that's a great question. So again, the actual modality of the modality of the course is the choice of the faculty member. And so they can choose online, synchronous, asynchronous, or hybrid, which was our face-to-face. So the faculty have determined those, and those are being loaded into the course schedule right now. So students can start logging in and they can see what modality any individual course is. So then the question arises, well, I'm a student, I see my courses are listed as hybrid, but for various reasons, I don't want to come to campus. The student does have that ability to make that decision. And so they will then need to notify the faculty, okay, I'm in your class, but I will be selecting the remote version of the class. And so it's really sort of that kind of class management with the faculty, and understanding that students may vary in and out a little bit depending on their circumstances. So in all cases, the faculty will have control over the number of students who physically show up in the classroom, right? So those spaces have been identified, and you can't exceed the maximum capacity of that space. But the students, just as we have indicated with faculty and staff, will have varying levels of comfort or risk assessment, and they'll have some of the same complicating issues that many of our faculty and staff have. And so for them, we need to allow them to make that same choice that we're giving to faculty and staff. And so we've been working really hard over the summer to outfit classrooms with the technology to allow this. So 64% of our classrooms will have the ability to live broadcast on Zoom or WebEx or anything like that, the course. And so with that kind of number, and with the fact that about 70%, we think, of the classes have indicated they want to go online, we're confident that we'll be able to deliver that simultaneous course experience for the face-to-face and the remote learning. So that's the answer. It's sort of a combination, a conversation that happens between student and faculty member. And again, we just want to have the highest flexibility as we can, understanding that everybody will have this potential to change as their circumstances change.
A follow-up to that is, do you anticipate a percentage being released in terms of online versus hybrid?
So we'll announce it when it gets finalized, but as I said, the early indications right now is it's looking about 70% online and about 30% hybrid.
Thank you. Here's a follow-up as well in terms of the COVID testing. Does it also include antibody tests? Because we've talked a little bit about that.
No, it does not.
It does not.
Yeah, it does not.
Okay, thank you. Going through, are there any word about activities, clubs, and sports yet? I've heard some talk about switching possibly fall and spring sports, for examples. And this is more about recreation and intramural. So we'll ask Vice President Hurt, how are we handling those sports?
Sure. So I'll speak to intramurals. We are not intending on in this initial phase of having intramurals. As we continue to kind of move through phases and the current state improvement improves, then we'll certainly look at what intramurals, what club sports, what activities we're able to safely do. But as we prepare to open, we do not intend on having intramurals club sports.
Follow-up question for the provost. As Cook Library is a component of the state institution, should it be open to the public, and will the university be allowing visitors who are possibly not affiliated with TU to use the library when the academic semester begins?
So that's a challenge, of course, but what we intend to do is what we did in the spring, which is that it's a resource for our campus first and foremost. And so it will be students and faculty and staff. We just did a big walkthrough of Cook Library earlier this week and have identified some spaces where we can sort of spread out and do things like that. But we know it's going to be such an important resource for our students that, because its density is also coming down dramatically, we want to protect that space and prioritize it for our student use. We know a lot of students will be having variable schedules, so you may have an online class at 9 a.m. and then a face-to-face at 11 and then an online later. And we think that the library and other spaces will have some high use for students who want to take their online class where we have the technology, the computers, the high-speed Wi-Fi, all those sorts of things. And so we're working really hard to outfit the library for that as best we can for that capacity. But its real use is prioritizing for students. And so the library faculty and staff have been working really hard to do that.
Thank you. This is a question for Vice President Lowenthal, and we're right at round 10:01, so we only have a couple more questions. If I could hold the panel, thank you so much for your patience. The question is, can we have easily accessible spreadsheet to review the capacities across campus, particularly perhaps using the PeopleSoft system or 25 Live, which is the room reservations? It would be helpful for those who are planning events or just using spaces around campus.
Excellent question. Certainly we can circle back and see if there's something we can pull together on that. Right now, as we talked about earlier, the walkthroughs that we're doing with pretty much every area with either the deans or the VPs is going to be specific to the room capacities in each building. There's a lot of work going on throughout campus to prepare the campus for a return. That's something that I think is a good idea. Just we have to work out the logistics on that.
Thank you. And one final question. We're getting a lot of thanks for the TU leadership team for the great job you're doing in keeping the community informed. This was very helpful. I saw the new outdoor furniture, someone says, on the Instagram account, perhaps the president's Instagram account. I said, it looks great. Will there be additional shelters and tents on campus in case of rain, or what about outdoor heaters when the weather gets cooler? Would be great to consider that, Vice President Lowenthal.
Understood. And we're taking tent requests on a case-by-case basis. And for the most part, though, we really are hoping folks take advantage of the very many options we have, including the ones discussed earlier by the president and provost, where we are not doing events so that there is additional space available, and especially in West Village and other event space. We're trying to limit the number of tents, both from the perspective of the appearances and the management of that, as well as the cost, given all of the other costs that we're absorbing in the budget at this time. So we're just trying our best, and we hope everyone takes advantage of that outdoor furniture. I would say, though, obviously in the rain, I don't think that's going to be very realistic, and putting heaters outside is also a very difficult thing to do.
That's great. And we'll end it out on, Steve, been asked the question about the last day to be able to use administrative leave.
Yeah, we've communicated that August 3rd, after August 3rd, administrative leave won't be an option because we should, by that point, we'll have everybody assigned to whether it's telework continuing or phasing people back in to come back onto campus, those who will need to come back to campus or some hybrid of that. So August 3rd would be from that point forward, administrative leave won't be an option.
Thank you. Well, we're well over our time. I want to remind everyone that the recording of this will be available at towson.edu on our microsite, the same place that you found the link to join today. And I want to turn it over to President Schatzel.
Thank you very much, Marina. I just want to share with everybody that I'm a real fan of the outdoor furniture too. Talk about the fact that there was some lemonade made out of this situation of lemons. I just think that we're going to see a lot more outdoor furniture being placed out. And when you realize the beauty of the campus, that we didn't have those gathering spaces properly outfitted, I think it's just going to be a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to really share the campus in a different way and in a way that's safe for people to be able to do it. I want to make sure that I take the opportunity to give a thanks to the co-chairs of the Return to Campus and Return to Classes task forces. That would be the provost, Vernon Hurt, Sarah Slaff, as well as Steve Jones. They've provided fantastic leadership to be able to work towards getting the campus ready to be open, as well as the fact of all the dozens and dozens and dozens of people that have worked on the implementation teams to be able to prepare the protocols. And there have been dozens and dozens of staff and faculty that have worked on those protocols and done those studies to be able to best prepare the campus itself. We've never done this before. This is a truly, unprecedented situation. But the way that the community has rallied together to be able to work together to be able to prepare the campus is something that I can tell you this is inspiring to me. So I just want to thank everybody that's been involved with preparing the campus. And as I said, there's probably hundreds of people that have done that for all the hard work that you've done. I also want to thank everybody for the support that they've given each other over the last months as we've got ahead, and that there's more work to go. But I hope that you share my confidence in the fact that we're working together to be able to do that, and that it's all about providing an outstanding academic experience for our students, but always putting the safety of our community and the well-being of our community first too. We'll probably have another town hall in a couple of weeks to be able to make sure that everybody stays informed. But until that, please check the resources that are on the website, as well as the chat lines and frequently asked questions that we have, and also the resources that are coming out of University Communications Weekly to be able to do that. Thank you again for all your support.